As Washington, D.C.'s central library, the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library serves D.C. residents from every neighborhood and culture in our city, with offerings ranging from makers' labs to town halls, co-working to concerts. We go well beyond books. Here, artists and activists, teachers and learners, toddlers and seniors converge to explore our city's past and the infinite potential of its future. Because the MLK Library is not only a place to be quiet, it is a place to be heard, to be understood. It is a place to explore the possibility of all we can be, and it is a place to just be. Welcome to the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library, celebrating 50 years as Washington, D.C.'s first memorial to Dr. King.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the MLK Library. I'm Rich Reyes-Gavilan. I'm the Executive Director of the DC Public Library. It is an absolute thrill to welcome this many people to the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library here in Washington, D.C. If you haven't had the opportunity to explore this building in depth, I urge you to do so. You'll learn a lot about people who did the work and about a lot of people who are still doing the work, and it's a phenomenal space. We're actually really excited that the architect of this building is in town, Francine Houben. Just a coincidence? In from the Netherlands, working on a Smithsonian project, so we're really excited to have Francine in the building. We're so thankful to Loyalty Books for partnering with DC Public Library on bringing incredible talent like Colson Whitehead and Nicole Hannah-Jones, and tonight will be no different. We're so excited to hear from W. Kamau Bell and Kate Schatz, who are supporting their phenomenal new book, Do the Work. I perused the book. It's got a lot of spaces to color and write in, so I'm wondering how we purchase it for the library, but they pay me for those problems. I'll handle that offline. I want to thank David Quick, who is DC Public Library's Coordinator of Adult Services. I also want to thank our best partner, the DC Public Library Foundation. The foundation typically buys a number of copies for all these events, and we're always so thankful for their partnership. Marquette Smith and Susan Haight are the co-presidents of the foundation, and they're in the back. Thank you, Marquette and Susan, for being here. So let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Hannah Oliver Depp, the owner of Loyalty Books.
Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Oh, I'm so happy to see all of you. Thank you very much. And as I said, I'm Hannah Oliver Depp. I'm the owner of Loyalty Bookstores. We have two locations, one here in the Petworth neighborhood of DC and one in downtown Silver Spring. And we are incredibly honored to be partnering yet again with the library to bring you this event. And I managed to keep it together backstage, but I will not be during this event because this book is awesome. And our speakers tonight are incredible, so I'm delighted to introduce them. You're in for a real treat tonight. This book is, and I'm so delighted to have it because so often people come into the bookstore, come into the library, come in everywhere and go like, but what do we do? And you can feel like that, right? Spend an hour on Twitter and you're just like, but what do we do? I do not recommend spending an hour on Twitter, by the way. Not good for your health. But in case you're feeling that way, you're going to have the answer in this book. It's a great book to give to people, especially the youth in your life, but we can all use it. This is an interactive workbook, and tonight, several of the creators of this book, including our two main authors, are also here. So we're going to get a wonderful behind the scenes of how this book was made and an incredible conversation between collaborators. And those collaborators are, allow me to introduce, Ken Uranka is an award-winning author, journalist, editorial consultant, producer, and podcast host whose work amplifies the lived experience, advocacy, and labor of people of color and shifts the narrative around those who deserve liberation, joy, justice, and dignity in America. She is also an Alfred Nobler Fellow of Type Media Center, and you can find her at kenra.com, and she is at Kenra on all social media. Way to grab that handle. Dan Holton is a multidisciplinary designer whose work includes editorial design, book design, craft, branding, and retail installation. She maintains an active member in many industry design organizations, a critic for college design programs, and a juror for some of the most coveted design and illustration competitions. For a fourth year in a row, Sisters from AARP, a newsletter that she correctly creates, received a Webby nomination, and you can view her work at dianeholton.com and her daily musings under Diane Holton on social media. Kate Schatz is an author, activist, educator, and queer feminist mama who's been talking, writing, and teaching about race, gender, and social justice and equity for many years. She's the New York Times bestselling author of the Rad Women book series, Rad American Women A to Z, Rad American Worldwide, Rad Girls Can, and Rad American Girls A to Z. Woo! And our gentleman of the panel, W. Kamau Bell, is a dad, husband, and comedian. He directed and executive produced the 4-part Showtime documentary, We Need to Talk About Cosby, which premiered at Sundance. He famously met, that's it. That is correct. He famously met with the KKK on his Emmy Award-winning CNN docuseries United States of America with W. Kamau Bell. Woo! Get it tight, get it tight. Kamau's first book has an easy-to-remember title, The Awkward Thoughts of W. Kamau Bell, Tales of a 6'4" African-American, heterosexual, cisgender, left-leaning, asthmatic, black and proud nerd, mama's boy, dad, and stand-up comedian. He is the ACLU Artist Ambassador for Racial Justice and serves on the board of directors of Donors Choose and the advisory board of Holla Back. Ladies and gentlemen, your panel.
Thank you, Hannah, for that lovely and rousing introduction. We appreciate you. And thanks to all of you for being here. Give yourself a round of applause. So we are here to talk about Do the Work. But before we get into that, I want to dig into y'all business a little bit.
Okay, let's go.
How y'all get to be friends?
How do we get to be friends?
We just met tonight. This is the first time. We keep making that joke.
It's a good joke. I mean, so we both live in the Bay Area. I live in Oakland. You live in the island of Alameda, which
Yep.
I don't think anybody's heard of unless you live in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like Oakland adjacent. We are both in this sort of like creative people, engaging with activism, also parent space, that you sort of see each other in sort of the same concentric circles, maybe sometimes at a farmer's market, you know what I'm talking about. And so I heard about your first book when somebody I worked with on United Shades said that his sister-in-law had illustrated a book called Rad American Women A to Z. And I was living in Berkeley at the time, and one day the illustrator, Miriam Klein-Stahl, was in my backyard with the book. And I was like, that's great. And we took a picture. And then Melissa, my wife, started paying attention to Solidarity Sundays, which is an organization you started to get, I would say, well, you can describe what it is. It's your organization. But we started going to Solidarity Sundays, and it just became a thing where I was really an admirer of your work. And also, you want to admire people's work, but also you want people to be a good hang. And so we hang out. So it was like a fun hangout.
Yeah. And to be clear, when I got that text from the barbecue with you holding the book, I was like, Kamau Bell has the book. So I want to be very clear that I was a fan. I'm still a fan, but.
Whew, that would be weird.
I mean, it would be a good time to drop that bomb. So how did y'all go from, yeah, you're a good hang, it's really cool that you have my book, to let's write a book together?
Oh yeah. So the last event that I did before the pandemic, actually, my last book came out in March 2020, which was a great
Good
time to
for
launch
books
a
to
book.
come out.
And my book launch was about a week and a half before everything shut down, and Kamau had agreed to moderate that event. And so we had this, it was just about 2 weeks before it. We had this big event, and it was great, but it was like right when the pandemic was starting to
packed,
creep.
shoulder to shoulder.
Oh yeah, we were all in there. And I remember there was one person who like elbow bumped and was like, social distancing. And I was like, what? What's that? And then, we know how that goes. So that was the last, we did this great event together, and it was really good energy. And then, fast forward a couple months, it wasn't long until the end of May 2020, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. Kamau was getting asked to go on all the late night talk shows to explain racism to the talk show hosts and their audiences.
To the white talk show
To the
host,
white
let's
talk
be-
shows. To the Jimmys.
Trevor Noah didn't need me to go on. And, I mean, I did Trevor Noah, but it was a different conversation. Yeah.
But I got an email from Kamau saying, basically the email said that he had all these white people, and then he did parentheses, not just regular white people, like fancy white people.
The fancy whites.
Coming to him and saying, what can I do? This continued sense of, what do I do? Everything's terrible, I don't know what to do. And so he emailed me and said, can you help me with these white people? And I said, yes, send them, he basically, I feel like you tapped me in. You were like, I'm done, tapped me in. And that led to a whole series of events. And then you said, let's write a book.
I mean, I think we have skip passes a lot, but there was literally a period where I was sending white people to you.
Yes.
Like I was actually going, no, go talk to this person. And I got to go on Conan and got to assign Conan O'Brien's whiteness to you. And he accepted it.
There's a lot of whiteness.
But and I remember at one point, it is a lot of whiteness. It's long and rangy, pale. And I also, like, it was funny, I didn't realize how effective that would be. But then I hear from you like, man, a lot of white people are coming to me. Like, it was really, like, you would do Instagram lives, and white people were like, I was told to come here.
Oh. Yeah. Yes.
Word.
And I think, but really, we had this moment, and there was it was social media, and we were talking, and we knew that moment wouldn't last, right? We knew the energy of that moment, whether it's the people in the streets protesting, or the people buying books about anti-racism, and the companies releasing corporate statements about their DEI stuff. We knew that would pass, right? And so part of us wanting to write a book was, how can we kind of harness some of this energy and create something that can last beyond this moment, but that can be a next step for people. The folks who've talked about it, thought about it, read some books maybe, hopefully, but actually don't know what to do. So that's how we ended up here.
Or bought some books and didn't read them.
Yes,
That
bought
part
some
too.
books for the Zoom background.
Yeah, that part. So when you describe this book to people, what do you say?
Well, lately you've been saying that it's like highlights for children, but for ending white supremacy.
Yes. The idea of like if you go to a dentist's office and there's kids in that dentist's office, or you're taking a kid to a dentist's office as an adult, there's a highlights magazine, and you're like, ooh, let's see what Goofus and Gallant are up to. This is that highlights magazine, but for anti-racism.
And the other way
And for adults.
We've also described it as, I think the other thing for parents out there, if you're familiar with the Brain Quest books, which are the books you buy your kids in the summer so that they don't forget everything that they learned during the school year. And when we were writing this book and came up with the idea, it was during the pandemic, and we're both parents and our kids were home. So we were up close and personal to how they're learning and how their teachers were trying valiantly and kind of desperately to get kids engaged. So we both had the idea for an activity book.
All right, that was gonna be my next question. Why did y'all decide to do an activity book? Okay, so then that leads me to ask, how do you see this alongside like a lot of other resources, right? Like you mentioned, like in that moment, folks were buying books about anti-racism, folks were buying books about white supremacy, and you list a lot of them in the book for those of you who've had a chance to look at it. How do you see this alongside those books?
We've often literally thought of it as like there's like a stack on your bedside table of the heavy tomes and the serious books that are the product of years of scholarship and research and work, and then ours is like in between books, or you take a break, or you just want to do a crossword puzzle and you finish a chapter and you kind of take a break. I mean, I think we've seen it as a complement, a kind of like sidekick to those books.
Yeah, I think when we saw those, that 2020 period when you saw all these anti-racist books go to the top of the bestseller list again, some of which had come out years before, and most of those books are good books. Many of them are good books, but the idea being like, I could just picture people even reading those books, but then not knowing how to connect that to the protests they saw on television, or not knowing how to connect that to their workplace. Some of those books are about that. And also, or I saw people buying those books and like, now I got it, I don't know what to do with it. I'm afraid to read it. Or so there was this idea of like, and then I heard from a lot of bookstores that people reserve those books and then never pick them up. So the idea was like, and as a comedian, I feel like I'm always trying to figure out how do I make the message go down in a way that it is enjoyable, that it's funny, that it sort of motivates you, that isn't just like, here's the facts. Because the facts have been distributed many times throughout the history of this country.
Right.
And the facts help some people, it doesn't help everybody.
Right, how do you help people get over that hump from this is what I've read to this is what I'm doing.
Yes.
Right. Word. Okay, so Diane and I are here. Why did you ask us to work on this book?
I mean, I just think you also realize how special this evening
Yes.
is right
Yes,
here.
it's different.
This is not the regular book event we do. Normally it's me and Kate, maybe there's a moderator on stage, but these are two of the people who the book would not have been created in this format without this work of these two people. So whatever that means to you, soak it up in a different way. This is, I know DC likes to feel special. Ta-da! Now you're special.
Yeah, we asked you because we wanted to find really great people to work with. I think one thing about Kamau and I both as writers is that it maybe is a little bit weird in terms of other writers. Like, we're both real collaborators. I'm an author, but I really like working with other people. I can enjoy the part where I'm on my own, in my own brain, doing my research, but I love to collaborate and be part of a team that's creating something, and you're the same. So from the beginning, we also put it in our contract that we wanted to hire a Black graphic designer and art director. It was very important to us to have a Black woman editor on board. And so when it came to, from the beginning, when we were talking about the art, we told the publisher that, they said okay, and then as those institutions often do, they said, well, do you know anyone? So I reached out to a friend of mine who's an illustrator and an artist, the great Wendy McNaughton, who works a lot and knows a lot of great illustrators, and I said, we're looking for a graphic designer, who should it be? And she said, Diane Holton is the gold standard. And then I said, great. And then similarly, and we had actually when we, this is like a little inside baseball, but I like getting geeky about books and publishing. But when our initial editorial team, our assistant editor was a fantastic Black woman editor, and we were really excited to work with her. She was young, she had so much good energy, and like 3 weeks after we signed the contract, she was like, boop, I got another job.
Because
she went to work
they only know a certain number of Black women in publishing, so that person can be very valuable if they have good negotiation skills.
And she went to work with Chris Jackson at One World. She was like, here I go. So, in that moment, we were very clear, and we said, okay, well, we said from the beginning that we want a Black woman on the editorial team, and so they said, okay.
Because that
and
happens.
They said, do you know any?
Yes, do you know any? Because that happens. I've known that in my career a lot, where you go, I want a diverse crew, and that diversity sometimes floats through, and they count the diversity even if it's left. Like, well, we had diversity, and it's like, and so I think we then went to our editor and was like, and she was open to it, but we still need a Black person on this book. That 3 weeks didn't do it.
It wasn't
And
enough.
that's where you came in.
Yep. And then I went on, boop, 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 and I was like, aha, here we are.
And here I am. So my question for you, Diane, is why did you say yes?
Why not? No, I'm just kidding. No, I think the topic was important to me. It's something that over time I realized was important to a lot of other people. It wasn't necessarily just the timing of 2020, but I realized like I had taken a pledge probably like 6 or 7 years prior to help diversify the market within design, within illustration, where I can, and photography. And I felt like this would be a good entryway into making that move, because one of the requests that Kamal and Kate had was they wanted BIPOC artists and creatives on it. And so I thought this is a perfect opportunity to help with DEI, literally and figuratively, and also give opportunities to some marginalized voices that you don't always hear from and see. So I immediately actually reached out to Wendy, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you did this, that you referred me. And she, being the darling that she is, said, of course. But I will also say, and I think I told you all too, the email first went to my spam account.
Ray says,
Exactly. So it just so happened that I was looking through spam when it came, my spam, because I mean, who checks their spam? I do. But that's because also my day job, a lot of stuff goes to spam. So I was checking my spam when I saw this pitch, and it was lengthy, and they were very specific about who they wanted and what they were trying to do, and I was like, this is in line with what, with my interests on the creative side of yes, I'm in, and so then we went from there. But yeah, I felt like I came onto it not just for myself, but again to help these other artists and creatives get a little bit of shine and help tell some stories.
Wow, thanks. So I'm gonna answer my own question.
Yeah.
I say yes for 2 reasons. One, because y'all are dope. Like,
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah.
That's a given though.
like we already had several of Kate's books on our bookshelf because I have a kid who is also rad, and so we had all the A through Z books already, so I was quite familiar with your work. And then I had listened to every single episode of Denzel Washington is the greatest actor of all time. So I was like
So is it
already a
period?
fan.
Is that what I heard?
Yeah. I was already sucked in. So yes, y'all are dope, but also because this is really squarely in my wheelhouse. So I write books about white supremacy and anti-blackness and racism. And so sometimes when people reach out to me and ask me to do stuff, I'm like, yeah, no, that's not my thing. But with this one, it just felt right. Like it's what I do, it's what I'm passionate about, and to have the opportunity to work on a book that I knew would reach so many people just felt right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so.
And one thing I want to add too about Kanria, about your role in the book too, is that often, in publishing, what is usually done is that maybe the terms have changed, but they call it like a sensitivity read, where they'll bring in readers to read a manuscript at the end, like when the whole thing has been written, and then they bring in people to kind of read for what they call sensitivity, right? Is the author getting it right? Is there anything offensive or problematic? And I have issues with a lot of that process, but mainly that it's this process of waiting until the very end to bring in this person to be like, okay, change this, this, and this. And with our process, you were involved at a much earlier stage than I think is common.
Yes.
You were reading real early drafts, like you were reading some real messy stuff. Sometimes it was a little bit horrifying what other people were
To
seeing.
hit send.
This is not done. This is a Google Doc. But I felt that was really essential for the process too, that it wasn't just like at the very end someone reads it and like gives us the check mark that we did good, that I really wanted your eyes on it.
Or they're so late in the process that they're
There's
like,
nothing to change.
that they're saying something, this part is not right. Too late.
Yeah, because it doesn't also matter, if it's not just about do we get a few words right, it's about how it's done, right? It's about the entirety of the project. And so if someone's just reading at the very end and just like spot checking it, that doesn't have depth.
Yeah, and I do sensitivity reads for clients, and the reality is when I do those reads, I always have to say, this is what I have pulled for you, but they have the choice to take the notes or not take the notes. And oftentimes, time ends up being the excuse to not take them. And it's just something that they can say that they did and that there's no real substance or intention behind it. And y'all were really clear, because I was looking at outlines when I first came on board. But also, y'all were really great about taking feedback. That's not always the case. Like if I say, yeah, no, this sounds hella white, no, we're not. or who are you talking to here? Because this doesn't, you know what I'm saying? And I'm very direct, clearly. But y'all could take that, and you wanted it. And so it made the process feel really good and collaborative. And that actually brings me to my next question. Yes, it was collaborative with us, but y'all brought in a whole bunch of people to do pieces and parts. Like, why was that important? Why was it important for you to be in community with other creators when you were making this book?
Oh, can you hand me the book?
Sure.
I just get excited about all the other people that we worked with. I think one is that another thing that I think we realized that we had in common about our process is that I think Kamau and I both, we like to think we're pretty smart, but we're also really clear that we're not experts. And we both work in fields where we're not certified experts and genuinely enjoy finding the people who are experts and bringing them on board. So with my Rad Women books, especially my last book, Rad American History, I was reaching out to academics and scholars and people who are actual experts in the field and doing interviews, and you do that on United Shades constantly. So I think it felt like a very natural thing for us to do here, to bring in other voices, to bring in consultants, to, we gave an entire section. I'm trying to see if I can find it. We've got a math section. We know this guy, Nate Alexander. He's a math professor.
Actually, I met him through United Shades of America.
And I weirdly used to work with him in Oakland.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
And he's a math professor, and we
At Morehouse.
we wanted to bring him in, and we were like, well, we'll just give you a section. So we just gave him a whole spread, and he designed this whole. Honestly, it's hard. Math is hard for me.
But let's be clear, not as hard as the first draft.
We were like, this feels like a college level math, but we were like, can you create these math problems to explain systemic inequality and racism?
And I had met him through United Shades. We did an episode about black folks in STEM and Afrofuturism, and he teaches math at Morehouse, and one of the things he teaches is like how gentrification works through math. And so, and we did the math on the show, and so same time we were writing the book, I was like, this guy, we need to get this. And also, there's just so many people I meet through United Shades who are dynamic, who are smart, who are like great on TV, and just you feel like this person needs more attention than this. So I think a lot of this for me is like people I've met throughout my life and career that I'm like, how come you don't have a TV show? And so like Professor Nikki Jones, who does the 5 things you need to know about policing in America, is somebody I met actually at a town hall meeting in Berkeley, and then like had her on United Shades in the Defund the Police episode. And so for me, it's like, it's just assembling this crew of people and just constantly figuring out ways to put them on. And I think that's the thing I love doing with United Shades is like getting the people I've met in the world on, or finding people on the show and then figuring out someplace else to put them on.
And our font. I always want to talk. Will you talk about our typographer, our font here?
So another DC thing, Trey is not here, but Trey Seals of Vocal Type, some of you know him. He is a local typographer here, black typographer here in the DC area. And he has a plethora of fonts. And one of the fonts that that I selected and pitched to Kamal and to Kate was the font Bayard. And actually it was Bayard and Martin, and we went back and forth, and I got both of them in, but most of that particular sans serif font is Bayard, and it's named after Bayard Rustin, who was an advisor for MLK. He's also a gay man. So that was, when we talk about like inclusivity, that was that was like another layer to this book. Not just bringing in a BIPOC artist, but also like using fonts or typography that also was very meaningful and intentional. So,
don't worry about that baby. That baby can, we're all cool. So it's up to you. That baby can cry. I was looking because I just wanted to see, but that.
So yes, so that, take a little, when you're going through the book, pay attention to the font because it does have meaning and intentionality behind it. And again, Trey is not here with us tonight, but he does live here in the DC area, and his fonts are available for purchase. Every single one of the fonts does have meaning, so when you go to the website, you can read a little bit more about it. So
they're so good. Each one is named after a different kind of social justice activist or hero, and they're based on signage from their different movements. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's yes. When I showed it, Kate, she was like, oh my gosh, and I was like, I know, it's good, right? This is like too good to be true. It's all in sync, and she was like, yes. So yeah.
And we were going to get to this, but just I always say over 15 artists in the book are represented.
Roughly, yeah.
Okay.
I feel like I should have counted and known you guys, but I just kept adding folks, individuals to it. But they're all over the world, so not just local, domestic, but also global. And they range across the board, from African American to Asian to Indian, so on and so forth. It was very important to me to, again, remain inclusive because even though, this book might appear like it's only talking to one particular group or maybe 1.5, it actually is talking to everyone. So I wanted to make sure that like the people that were included, one, were excited about the content, could see how they would get into the content and maybe think about some of the issues or concerns or that they've had or experiences that they personally have had or friends or family have had. So again, it was very intentional. I think that's like that's my word for this book. I was intentional about who was being hired, how many of a certain demo were being hired, men and women, emerging versus established. Because some of the artists that are featured, when you look them up, they're big names. They're like Wendy McNaughton, and then others were new, who they've never had an opportunity. One in particular that's in this room is Paula Sorto, and she's over here on the left. She is responsible for doing the emojis that you see in the book. She's also responsible for doing the president's page. She didn't do the page, but she did the little the
little heads?
the characters. Yeah,
The
for
little
them.
orange, the little orange situation that's there.
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
She did those, and then it just if you look closely, you'll see I duplicated them. And I think there was like another element that she did. But I believed in, again, just being inclusive with who was part of this, because now Paula, along with a couple other artists, are new artists. I mean, are published artists, you can say. So it felt good to be able to extend that opportunity to them.
And our caricatures.
And our caricatures. So your caricatures is Marcus Kwame Anderson. He's based out of New York, an artist I'd never worked with. Only came across so again, inside of baseball. And producing the book, not everybody's going to sign on to a book. I mean, is going to accept your opportunity, and it's usually for a myriad of reasons. Sometimes it's due to time, sometimes it's due to budget, sometimes it's due to subject matter. And I had two artists that I was working with and that I showed, Kate and Kamal, and they're both very good. One just had a likeness that seemed to kind of mimic. They had a particular style that was conducive to them and a certain part of their.
That's the guy who everybody looked like him, right?
Okay.
Okay.
I was trying not to say that, Kenria. But yes, when you looked at his pieces, they kind of favored. And then there was Marcus, and Marcus is the gentleman behind the Black Panther graphic novel that Kate owned, and she has a great story about how her kid met, has been reading the book and then met one of the Black Panthers. But I came across him because of that book and because of another book that he wrote, that he illustrated, and I thought, you know what, he's clean, he's crisp, and I have a feeling, because this is January, I was like, I have a feeling that I'm gonna need a lot of caricatures, a lot of portraits from him. So I need somebody who's gonna be easy to work with, that's gonna be quick, that's gonna deliver, that's not gonna be a diva, all the things, and because they do exist. And Marcus came on board, and he did a couple of them. The first ones he did had really big heads.
Bobbleheads.
I'll back up. I showed Kate and Kamal, the other artists, and we went back and forth. I mean, it really is a process with working with artists. It's not usually one and done. Usually you have to go back and forth and back and forth. And likenesses are really, you have to really spend some time with them. Some people are really great at doing it the first time, some are not, and you have to massage it. And so this other artist was like, he was close, but he couldn't get it. Marcus came in, swooped in, and he delivered these bobbleheads. but yet we could tell that there was something there, that if we just had him revisit that and not do the big heads and maybe do it more to size, it would be great. And speaking of size, when he first rendered Kate and Kamal, I just sent him pictures of them. I never sent pictures of them together. So he didn't realize the height difference. So,
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Wasn't it like you looked like a 12-year-old girl?
Yeah. But at first, I think we were the exact same size.
you were the same height.
Yeah.
And then I looked incredibly tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had a whole Zoom where you and I were standing next to each other. We were backing away from the computer,
Yeah.
and we were trying to get it really.
This
to
is
scale.
how tall we are. Yeah, no, because that's the first one we were the same height, which looked weird. And then one, it was like, I'm Kamal, and this is my 12-year-old sidekick, Kate.
Exactly.
And we're going to fight racism.
Yes.
And then I think there was also issues of what we were wearing. 'Cause
Oh, yes.
I looked the first one, I looked like I was on my way to pick up my kids from school.
Yes, he had khakis on,
Yeah,
and,
khakis
and
on,
some
and
gray
shoes,
shoes.
like a plain black T-shirt.
Yeah.
Because I'm a dad who doesn't want to spill things.
That's facts.
And you looked like You look like your name was Karen.
Yeah, I was wearing capris.
Yeah.
So like I said, you go back and forth when it comes to like likenesses.
And so I was like, she's got tattoos. She's cool. She wears jumpsuits.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, we can do this. So when they got together and stood next to each other, I screen grabbed it from Marcus. I could say like, see how the height, see how they are, but like don't make her, but like make her a little bit taller though. Like I know she's really that short, but like just make her a little bit taller, so that at least like when they're holding stuff, you know, it doesn't look too off. And so we did that, and then yes, we got into the clothing and
And I was
to
also at one
tats.
point I was like, it's okay that you you can let people know I know I have gray hair.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
At first it came through like,
That was the other thing. I think he was trying to be naive.
he's trying to be nice. He's trying to be nice. But I was like, but
Yeah.
I'm not going just for men. So let's not be ridiculous.
He definitely had it all dark, and then he went in, and gave you the gray that you were.
He
you
caught,
know,
yeah.
He matured you.
Then he hurt my feelings.
But he redeemed himself because remember he did the car spot, and he had the Justice as a license plate.
Yes, no, he did great. And he just recently won the Eisner Award for his
He
Black
did.
Panther graphic novel.
Yeah, so definitely check him out. That was as of last week. So he should be on cloud 9. I don't know.
See, this is reminding me of why I like collaborating like this and working with all these people, because so much of our process with this was Kamau and I coming up with all these ideas and
yes.
concepts, and then just telling you,
Yes, I
and
did.
you going and translating it and finding these artists. So a lot of the process was us getting stuff back, and it was like, okay, well, here's an illustration. Here's that crazy board game about the myth of meritocracy that you requested. Here's this thing. And actually, I feel the same way about your edits too, Kenria. When they would come back, I was like, ooh, it was so
I know,
fun.
it's like you kept saying it was like Christmas. It's like those are the nerd moments, when you get really excited about getting edits. I do too. It's fun. Yeah.
It's exciting because I will say that like for those I haven't worked in book publishing that much, but I will tell you on 2 other projects I didn't have the luxury of working with the authors, so that was huge. That was a game changer in this book. And my understanding and speaking with other like designers who work on books, they oftentimes just work with the art director, the in-house art director. They're not able to jump on a Zoom or meet in person or jump on a phone and like have conversation. And it was really a treat to be able to, and a blessing that I had access to them in this way, because that really helped speed up the process. And in certain instances, I mean, of course, there's still stuff that you have to do, publishing-wise, things that just are going to be slow. But it was great to be able to say, hey, Kate, can we jump on a call? Or you would say the same thing. I mean, when we first started this process, I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit nervous. And I think Nicole might remember when I was talking to you all, and she had these Post-its. I mean, there's note cards, and I was like, oh, wow, this is coming to get, okay, we're doing, you know what, I'm all in. Let's do this.
Yeah. I was literally
collaborative.
like, here's our book. It's 300 ideas on index cards. It's
Yes.
in a stack. We got it. It's going to be great.
I was like, okay, buckle up, let's do this. But yeah, and then yeah, so yeah, they were, you were easy. We even had Kamal's daughter who joined. She was part of the critiques.
She insisted.
She insisted.
She had good ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, she weighed in on some coloring pages. We had a good time.
And she's got the book. She's 11. And she's got the book now. She like took it down to her room with a pencil and did like the check your privilege activity, and it opened up this whole conversation about skin tone and whether she's fair skinned or not, because she's mixed. And it was like, she's like, well, I don't own this house. And I was like, yeah, but you
You live here.
Yeah.
You good.
Yeah.
You good.
you ain't afraid of not paying the mortgage, are you? No. Yeah. You put somebody in charge of that. This guy. So yeah, so it was a whole conversation about privilege that she had never thought of before because of the book. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really did expose people to, not expose, but it really made people think to include some of the artists, and they had questions. Some of them had questions about the content, and I would reach out to Kate or another editor in-house to, kind of get clarification on things, because like I said, I was getting drafts, so they weren't, I don't even know if you had fully seen them. I think so.
Yeah, I saw drafts.
But I was getting stuff early, because one of the things for me was, I don't know how big this book is going to be. So, and they had all these ideas that were fantastic, but I knew there was a clock. And I remember like the publisher was like, okay, we need this by this and this by that. And I was like, okay, we're gonna, all right, let's see what we can do. And I also knew that artists are not just working on one project. They're working usually on not just yours, but like, you know, maybe half a dozen other ones. Everybody's different, so it was important that I deliver for you all, but then also make sure the artists had time and space to be able to also think about it, think about the content, and think about how to deliver and show up. And as I said to them, there were also artists that did decline working on this book because of the content. And I was disappointed to hear that, but you know, it was their choice. It was their choice. So
I mean, I don't blame anybody because I do think the idea of an anti-racism activity book is kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Ridiculous.
Ridiculous. That's where, like, I was trying to like, what's the word? Ridiculous. It's a ridiculous, but I come from like ridiculousideas.com. Like that's just like you know, how about a 4-part series about Bill Cosby?
okay, Showtime said.
How about I go meet the KKK for television? So I think that like for me, but I think part of knowing that you have ideas that are perceived as ridiculous is not judging people when they don't get the idea. And so for me, it becomes more valuable to sort of embrace the people who get the ideas and then try to keep those people around you because you know that, this is the crew that will get me. So for me, that's the thing. I get more excited about the people who understand it than I sort of bless and release the people who don't get it.
I think for me, I was just kind of surprised because I had worked with them before, some of them.
Well, you got some different judgment.
Yeah,
Just a little bit. So I felt a certain kind of way about
I understand.
1 or 2 or 3. No, it wasn't that many. But then the ones who really leaned in did. Like they were just like, as I was telling you, the Centering Black Women. That artist, Adriana Billet, she's in London. She is responsible for that center page spread of all these women. Kate gave me like this list of women. And I was like, oh my gosh, how many are we talking about? But, you know, when I reached out to her, because I worked with her I just love working with her. She's so good. I said, okay, I'm just going to give you this list, and you just knock them out as you can. She also did the paper doll. The paper doll that's later in the back.
So pressure.
Sorry, hurry up.
And that section was us talking early on and saying, we were like, how can we be sure to center Black women's voices in this book? And then we were like, oh, we can literally put them in the center.
I mean, it's such a awesome and cheesy idea.
Yeah, but it works.
But it works, yeah.
But it works because it's actually the scholarship is there.
Yeah, that's literally my favorite part of the book is centering Black women. That in combination with the part where we talk about how people can do the work and give lots of examples, because it's like, okay, a lot of people talk about listening to Black women, but then what do you do with that information?
Oh, take action?
So you start with centering the words and the wisdom of Black women, and then you move to this gatefold.
This one?
Yep, where we give you actual actions that you can take based on that information. And so those are my favorite sections. I would love to hear from each of you. What are your favorite parts of the book? Like, what's your favorite go-to exercise?
Well, I love that to-do list at the end because to me, it's also the kind of joke for readers of like, look, if you want to just go to the part where we tell you what to do, just go there. And the story I've told is, I remember when I was a parent and when I first had an infant, and I would buy those like baby sleep books that were like 400 pages. And I was like, no, I don't care about the studies or the science. I just need to know how to make my baby sleep. Like, where's the part where you tell me what to do?
You swaddle them tight in a baby burrito.
And then you shush them.
So I was like flipping through, where's the part where you tell me? So that's that part of the book. So I think that my favorite, I really like,
But I saved my pages
oh,
already.
you did save yours. I'll save yours.
Sorry, I can
And
find
really
it.
quick, the Take Action is Jesus Lee, just so you know. She is one of the big artists that's featured in the book. She's like Wendy, so shout out to Jesus.
So I am a big fan of this. Oh yeah, there's a coloring break at the end of chapter 3, which is all about history. We wanted to make sure to include not just stories about all the terrible, depressing parts of American history that got us here, but also, you know, give people another coloring break, but with some learning. So there's a big spread about radical activists, artists, and freedom fighters, and it's just a giant brainstorm of organizations and individuals and groups from history that you may have heard about, maybe you haven't, and I just love how this one turned out, and I love thinking about people, you know, maybe they can color in the ones that they've heard of, but maybe you can't color it in until you go look them up and learn about them. And I also do love the centering Black women. And finally, I will say that I also really like our Lift the Flap page.
Oh, yes.
Just because it was one of these concepts from the beginning that we were like, can we do Lift the Flap? Because it just feels like such a familiar thing from childhood. It'd be like Clifford the Big Red Dog, you know, and you lift the flap. So in this one, it's a scene in a park, and I feel like the artists, you really just, you guys nailed this, and it's different scenes of parents talking to their children. So for instance, there's a parent and there's a police car, and the mother is saying to the kid, the police are helpers who keep us safe. And then you lift the flap.
I like that people laughed at Good one, Kate.
And it's a white parent talking to a visibly white child, and then you lift the flap and we offer you another idea. And this one says, instead, maybe you could say the job of the police is to help everyone. But unfortunately, police don't always do what they're supposed to do. And so that's, I feel, this is one of the ones that really felt like we had this like idea that was like, and it's a scene, and there's parents, and they're talking, and then you lift a flap, and it just really turned out.
I was like, lift the flap, huh? What? I don't have kids. Let me go do some research. Part of my job was also like, I was like, Kate, what books do you read? What are your kids? Huh? And she was like, highlights. And I was like, oh, right. And so I did get books. I went to the bookstore and got children's books so I could further understand the idea, but also that, and also I wanted some kids' books because I think they're fun. But also I wanted to better understand what the assignment was. That Lift the Flap was done by an artist by the name of Selene Pereira. She's in Canada, and she was another one that knocked it out. She was like, wait, I'm doing a Lift the Flap. I was like, yeah, you are. She's like, okay, how many do I need? I was like, hold on 1 second. But I love how she composed it, you know, put it all on one page and you know, made it happen. The previous one was Harkian Kalsi, and she's great. She also did the RX page at the back, the prescription page. But she is, for those that are typographers, I remember when we were first doing it, I was like, take all these words and put them into a page, into a spread. And you know what I love was that she did not say, I don't know if I can do that. She said, great, challenge accepted. And then I was like, please don't let there be any edits. And then like after it was done, guess what? There were two edits. But she worked it out and like didn't complain. And I just love that, like, you know, the artists that I worked with, nobody complained about, the ones that made it into the book, nobody complained about any edits that had to be made. What, say that again?
You said the ones that made it into the book, so they were like, there was a little bit of like,
No. I mean that because with this project and with other projects, you oversubscribe, right? So not every page makes it, not every activity makes it, and so that's what I meant. There was no shade towards anybody, but there wasn't. But hers, that made it into it, and I knew that she was really great with large bodies of type. And that when Kate requested, like, hey, we're going to do this coloring break, and we also want to pay a place where they could, you know, people could write in, I was like, oh, she's the person to do it. So, yeah. So, Kamal,
what are yours?
So we have a section called Chapter 2. It's called It's My Privilege. That's about privilege and how, I think a lot of times we talk about privilege in, those of us talking about anti-racism, talk about white privilege as if it's one word and that's all of it. And so we wanted to really tease that out as like, what is privilege? Whiteness is a part of privilege in America, but what is also other privilege? So this for me was like some of my favorite writing that I returned to in here. I really wrote this very well.
Yes.
So, and this is a lot of the book is written like a conversation between me and Kate. That was actually a lot of times those conversations between me and Kate, and so you see us going back and forth in the book. So this is me writing. Talking to Kate. We all have levels of privilege that aren't race-based, but when combined with our racial categorization, can either help close the gap or widen the gap, depending upon which side of the gap you're on.
For example.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
It's a reading. Okay. We're reading our conversation.
This is the first time we've done this.
It's a dialogue.
Okay, for you. A black kid is born in Brooklyn in the early 60s. His family moves him to North Carolina. Again, this is in the early 60s. So however bad racism was in Brooklyn then, I'd rather grow up there than in North Carolina. But for some reason, that kid happens to have a maniacally competitive spirit and is a head taller than anybody in his family. His name is Michael Jordan.
Ah, I get it. Do another one.
A white kid is born in Connecticut in the mid-1940s. He's born into an accomplished, successful family, but by all accounts is kind of a goofball. Not great in school, has an unspectacular career in the military, has a substance abuse problem, has a brother who's the star of the family who he can't ever hope to live up to be. He ends up being
George W. Bush?
exactly.
I was gonna say, does anybody know?
Yeah. Yep, Michael Jordan was born black into a racist world, but was able to work his way out of it. But while he could control how hard he worked, he couldn't control how tall he was. At least I don't think he could. But George W. Bush C- his way through life all the way to the freaking presidency. Even though by some accounts, all he wanted to be was the commissioner of baseball. That's white privilege. Literally no black, indigenous, Latino, Latina, or Asian American person can accidentally end up the president. Barack Obama did it against all odds. George W. Bush did it with all the odds in his favor. White, rich, Ivy League dad who was also a president. Plus his wife willing to put up with his nonsense. And he still needed the Supreme Court to win the election for him.
That part.
I'm sorry, I'm getting worked up. So,
Wait. Let's read we're not going to read you the whole book, but I think that then I say, no problem. What you're pointing out is that, drumroll, multiple truths can coexist at the same time. You can simultaneously belong to a privileged dominant group and a non-dominant group. In fact, that's the case for most of us who aren't straight and rich cis white dudes. So, look at that. We just explained it all.
yeah. And then connected to that, which is why I like this, is a check your privilege. I just talked about how Sammy, my oldest daughter, did a check your privilege checklist where you can go through and figure out
Get
your
it?
own
It's a
levels
checklist.
of privilege. I think you've been passed that out, maybe. And while it is very funny, because again, we're good writers, they are all real things that we considered, that we have thought about as being levels of privilege. Some of them are like, especially in the United States. So are you a U.S. citizen? That's a level of privilege in the United States of America. Are you George Clooney? That's a level of privilege in the United States of America. But it's just a way to sort of, that I really like this exercise because it just very quickly goes, forget what you heard, just do this. And by the number of things you have checked off, you're learning about your level of privilege.
All right. So as we get ready to wrap up, even though we hate
We're wrapped
to
up.
leave
I was
y'all,
ready to.
I know.
Everybody, let's break off into groups.
almost time. I'm sorry. But as we get ready to wrap up, I want to ask everyone to answer this question briefly. What is your superpower and how did you use it in the creation of this book?
What is our superpower and how do we use it in creation of the book?
No, you go first.
Oh man, there's so many. I'm humble.
Are you?
I think my superpower is really like, it's combined. It's identifying unsupported talent and then sticking my foot in the doorway so that talent can get through the door.
That was going to be my answer.
Because I say that because what I learned is like, if the project is based around you, you end up getting way more credit than you should deserve if you just get other talented people around you. So it's sort of like, and then if you can share that spotlight, then it replicates itself.
That's what's up.
Is that what you were going to say, Diane?
I was, as it relates specifically to creative, and creative being not just the artist featured in your book, but other aspects of creativity. So yes, that was going to be mine. Thanks, Kamal.
That's why I go first.
It's a good superpower for multiple people to have.
Yes.
I think I would say that my superpower is something that I don't at all think should be a superpower. And it's what we were just talking about before. We did a great interview before we came out here. You were saying a lot of really nice things come out about me and the kind of white person that I am. And it was a lot of praise for me as a white person who gets it. And I was saying that I would say that that's my superpower that I bring to this as a white person who's willing to talk openly and honestly about myself and my whiteness and my role in it, but also the larger kind of way that whiteness functions, talk about race, talk really openly and honestly and directly about it. And when I do get praise for that, I think it frustrates me because I don't think that what I do is that spectacular at all. I think I have other superpowers, like I'm a great writer, yay, that's great. But like this particular thing, I think the bar is so unbelievably low. The bar is not, it's like a non-existent bar.
Yeah.
So I don't, again, it's like the most discipline, it's like a superpower I didn't really have to try for. You know, at some point in my life, I feel like I got it, like I flipped a switch and I learned how to listen and I learned how to have empathy and listen to people of color and also then believe them, not just listen, but believe it, and to care and to really like understand that my freedom is bound up in your freedom, and none of us are free until all of us are free, and all of those things. And like I really believe that, and that unfortunately is kind of a superpower. So I'd like that to not be a superpower.
Yeah, but I would also like to say that, like, and I think every I can speak for black people now, but maybe other people of color like this too, knows how rare it is to have a white person that you look at and be like, and they know what you're saying. Like, that is super rare to have a white person, you can be like, and they're like, and you're like, oh.
Relief,
so
right?
That is a superpower.
Yes. Kenria, what about yours?
My superpower is connecting dots. So whether that be ideas or people, I'm really good at saying, oh, that's what you want to do? You should talk to this person. And you have this idea. Have you ever thought about this, theory that's over here? How can you put those frameworks together? I like to connect folks.
Do we really have to be done?
We do. I'm sorry. They're going to kick us out.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Thank y'all so much for coming out.
Thank you.
Everyone, please give it up one more time for Kenria, Diane, Kate, and Kamau. Y'all were amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Woo. Give it up for the amazing staff here at MLK Library. Thank you all so much for your partnership. Thank you all for coming. All of the books out front, if you need to pick one up, are signed. Woot woot. So great. I know, right? Woot woot. I love the ooh. You guys are a great audience. So you can enjoy those, pass it on, but also copies are available from the library. So get this book in your hands, get this book in your loved one's hands. Thank you all so much for coming. Bye.